I've been writing op-eds for a long, long time, and I knew that there was a more basic reason that there were so few women on the op-ed pages, and it's that women don't submit op-eds with anywhere near the frequency that men do. And at the time, my editors at the New York Times had told me about 3 out of 4 submissions were from men, outside submissions. At the Washington Post that year, it was 4 out of 5. But according to Sunday's paper, Sunday's tally in the Washington Post, it's now about as much as 9 to 1 outside submissions. And so my editors had always asked me, to refer, smart women, and I thought, well, that's the obvious solution: get more smart women to submit op-eds. And I had some experience with this too, because one of the reasons that I had been publishing op-eds since my early to mid-20s was that I had been targeted by an op-ed project in the 1990s. It was still called the Progressive Media Project, and they had noticed there was a lot of conservative commentary coming from conservative think tanks, and couldn't they make an effort to reach out to some people with alternative, more progressive points of view? And I came to their attention, and they shared with me really basic information, nothing rocket science, but basic information about how it worked. What's a lead, what's a news hook, how long do you have, what's the etiquette, what does an editor expect from you? Stuff that doesn't take a long time to share. And then they ran my pieces on what was then the Knight Ridder Wire. And so they went all around the nation and had a much bigger impact than I would have ever been able to have without that leg up. And also made me realize the impact. So during that time, I started writing, speaking on the radio, spoke at the National Press Club, met with Clinton's Latin American Affairs advisors, all this stuff going on when I was quite young. So I saw not only how there was such a huge return on investment for a small amount of shared information, I call it kind of passcode information, and I also saw the impact of it, the potential impact. Even for somebody, like pretty young and pretty, thinking, oh, I have a lot to learn, as you were saying, Katie, And that was the notion that I had, like, well, gee, couldn't we do something like this? Couldn't we target and train women experts and share that sort of passcode information with them? And the premise, it wasn't even to help women. The premise was, wouldn't this be good for public debate? Wouldn't this be helpful to editors who have been asking for them? So that was actually the original sort of origin for that thinking. And it's also not that
information is secret in any way. It's just that it tends to get shared among the people who participate in public debate. So people who participate in public debate right now, it tends to be a really narrow range of mostly white, mostly privileged, mostly men who are writing for the op-ed pages and in general participating in all the major questions of what should we do about the world, not just what's going on, but what should we do about it. And they share that information. It's not like it's secret, it's just shared among people who are doing it. And if you're not doing it and you're not in the pool of people who are doing it, you're not so likely to come across it, and let alone have the idea that, oh yeah, I could do that. And I work for I belong to a women's think tank, and which has an emphasis on media, and I thought, well, gee, why don't we do a pilot session? Why don't we, do some experiment around this? I didn't have any thought of creating an organization. It just seemed I had another job. I just thought this would be an interesting, valid experiment. And it was just far more successful than I imagined it would be. The first session was a pilot session with 12 women, none of them had published, and out of that session, 12 op-eds came out of that session, which is a pretty phenomenal success rate. And so we started doing it here and there. When I say we, it's I worked with my think tank and different partners, so there's kind of a sphere of people working on these issues. So this project actually in some ways became a little bit like connective tissue, working with different groups all interested in some angle of this. And now we work with 5 top universities, and about 20 different think tanks and nonprofits. And we do public sessions every month on either coast, and we're just going to launch DC in September. And we do sessions for community leaders all around the United States. 50% of them are low income. What else do we do? We work with shesource.org, which is a database of women experts, and
we're working with that database as well. And then the women are entered into our database and into a feeder system for op-ed opportunities and also television and radio. So we have kind of a two-part program, targeting and training and then feeding. So the way I describe the project really is, I describe it as a project to expand public debate with a tight focus on the op-ed pages, and the op-ed pages being where we get our measurable results. But what we're really doing is much broader, feeding public debate, feeding a national conversation that takes place in a much, much more important, larger sphere. But that's our target and our measurable results.